the phone.
Yeah.
The words go. Song continues on. Then the part, and here's how it goes. Yeah, we're gonna podcast. Maybe it'll be not singing about partying something. Yeah. Parker's on even more news. All right.
That's their intro, I guess.
Oh, God.
Welcome back to Even More News, the first and only musical news podcast.
That's right.
I'm Katie Stoll. My name is. Hi. I don't know if that worked.
Hi, I'm Cody.
Hi, Cody. We have a guest this week. Frequent guest, but it's been a while.
It's been a while.
Goodness knows how long. Writer and media commentator, writes the Present Age newsletter. Very thrilled to welcome back Parker Molloy. Hello, Parker.
Hello. Thanks so much for having me back. It has been a minute.
And is it a party in the USA?
It's always a party in the USA. Always.
That's the vibe. That's the attitude. And Jonathan
is
is also here.
Hi.
Hi.
Yeah, hi, Jonathan.
We are going to get that merch out soon. Don't worry, to all our Jonathan heads out there.
There's a room full of them somewhere if we got them all together.
I know.
Harris
People
heads.
keep saying, like, my name's Jonathan. I'd wear that shirt. Great.
It's convenient that there are a lot of Jonathans out there who would wear that shirt.
It's going to be, watch it become our most popular merch.
Watch that
indeed.
happen.
I bet if we did like a promotion, like an ad promotion on X, the Everything app, we get a lot
Not familiar.
of just like just the T-shirt, not making like, hey, some more news. We're a political podcast. We've got that. Just like, here's a shirt that says Jonathan is also here. I bet tons of people on X, the Everything app, would buy it.
Hell yeah.
No context.
He's a phenom, our guy.
But then like,
Yeah,
you leave
I'm
little
not.
notes
I'm not sure
in-
I want to be affiliated with whatever that ad would
X, the
show
Everything
up
app?
below or above.
It's owned by the richest guy in the world. What?
Yeah.
You don't
talking
want
about?
to.
What-
You don't want
what
to
could
be
possibly
be
go
into?
wrong?
probably like cars and stuff. That's it.
That's it.
He's only into cars and stuff.
You know what I'm into? Celebrating holidays.
Good.
Because it's that time of the show.
When we do holidays.
Okay. Okay. Friday, September 6th is National Chianti Day. I'm sorry. How does he say it? Chianti?
He said
National-
the late great Hannibal Lecter says
National-
Chianti. Yeah.
A National Chianti Day.
Yeah.
A day to enjoy the flavorful Tuscan red wine. I'm not going to try.
Hannibal Lecter. He used to eat bacon, but now he's because of the wind, he can't do that.
I did a lot of prep for this show by pulling up that clip. Boy, he was creepy.
Paid off.
R.I.P. Hannibal Lecter.
R.I.P. The late great.
Parker, hello. We've already welcomed you back, but
Yes.
I don't know. How are you doing right now? How are you feeling about the election and whatnot? What's your vibe in
Ooh,
regard
what's my
to
vibe?
the vibes?
Yeah. Well, let's see. How am I feeling about the election? That's an interesting question because
It's a general question.
how-
It's a broad question.
how
It's a
I
general election.
was feeling about the election before Biden dropped out was
Yeah.
I need to update all my documents, kind
Yeah.
of. That's kind of where I was at. I was in the middle of getting an updated passport and fixing
really?
something on my social
Yeah.
security card. But then, the past like month or so I've been feeling better about it. But that could just be foolish. That could be me
I know.
getting into 2016 brain. I don't know.
I know. I'm walking around with this existential dread of mostly about that. Exactly what you're saying. Like, it feels better, but also
It felt
that's
good.
scary
Yeah.
because, polling is hard. It's not really, especially with Trump specifically, has proven very fallible. Everything's within the margin of error for the most part. And, I'm remembering just how blindsided I was in 2016, and I don't want to be again. And since moving up here, I definitely feel more immersed in other points of view, to put it lightly. Like, I'm surrounded by a bunch of different opinions, some negatively surprising, some positively surprising. But yeah, I have just no real sense at all.
That's good though, because I feel like it's good that we've arrived at a place where most people, I think, respond to a question like that in a similar way, instead of confidently one way or another, because actually nobody knows anything. Nobody knows what's going to happen. And even if like the polls fluctuate all the time, there's like less confidence, which I think is probably good to drive up until the election, because then you're constantly like, well, we already experienced the dashed hopes of feeling like, well, clearly Trump can't win in 2016. That's not going to happen. And yeah, I don't know. It's not fun, but luckily elections seem shorter now because of what happened.
Yeah, but with a primary, I like this like 3-month election.
It's
thing.
Amazing. We need to start
fantastic.
doing primary season like in June.
Yeah.
Start June. Go from there. Figure it out.
I can dig that.
Otherwise, it starts the previous year in August, and I think
it doesn't really feel like it ever stops.
It's ruining people's brains and lives.
Speaking of ruining people's brains and lives, should we talk about some news?
Yeah. Oh, also,
Damn, I did such a good pivot.
You did. I'm sorry. I'm actually very confident. I'm very confident about this year at the election, actually, and I try to tamp that down and not express it too much, because I don't want people to get like complacent or like overconfident. But like, that guy's cooked, man. Nobody likes that guy. That guy sucks so much.
I
shit.
definitely don't agree with you on that.
I know you don't. And I'm obviously
I definitely don't agree with
bubble
it.
and stuff.
And that's
sucks.
what scares me. You're what scares me, Cody.
I do feel like. Like you have a lot of like very valid like criticisms and concerns that like we feel like we switched in a lot of ways, like from over the past like 8 or so years.
Yeah.
Or I'm like, it's fine.
I mean, if we had a time machine,
don't worry about it.
Something. But
you're like really mad at Democrats. You're watching all these Star Wars shows on Disney Plus.
Not currently.
Yeah.
I wouldn't say really mad, but at times mad. Parker, to catch you up to speed, I felt a bit frustrated by the DNC specifically.
Yeah, but also Trump sucks. Nobody likes that guy.
Yeah.
So
I'm pretty sure we did not need like 8 Republican speakers at the DNC or however many.
For example, that's one very valid point.
Just one.
Needed 12, 13. Get Liz Cheney there.
Yeah, why not?
Paul Wolfowitz. Why not?
We get 8 Republicans. They get the president of Teamsters Union.
Speaking of the pivot that I already did.
See, you nailed it a second time.
I know. I'm on fire today. Just like the internet after yesterday's news. Jonathan, why don't you tell us a little bit about what's going on with RT and Tim Pool and Benny Johnson and those other victims? Victims.
I believe you mean Commentator 2 and Commentator 3.
Commentator 2 and Commentator 3. Or 1 and 2, whatever.
On Wednesday, the Department of Justice announced that it had indicted 2 Russian nationals who are employees of RT, which is Russian state-controlled media, with a scheme to funnel money to what the indictment says is a Tennessee-based online content creation company in order to further Russian interests. Based on the details they gave in that indictment, it became very clear that that online content creation company is called Tenet Media, which hosts content on its YouTube channel from Tim Pool, Benny Johnson, Matt Christensen, Dave Rubin. The indictment says more than $10 million had been used to fund the company. And based on the specific number of YouTube subscribers that they reference in the indictment, we've been able to piece together. I think Commentator 1 is Dave Rubin. Commentator 2 is definitely Tim Pool.
Oh, Dave Rubin, not Benny.
I forgot Dave Rubin was involved in this. It's so
and
funny.
Benny is number 3. What's really interesting here, and we can talk about the money aspect of this, is we should say up front that Tim Pool and these other guys are not charged with a crime. In fact, they were the Justice Department considers them to have been duped by these Russian nationals and potentially the founders of Tenet Media, who are Lauren Chen and Liam Donovan, I believe.
Listeners,
And they're married?
You might know
They're
the
married,
roaming
yes.
millennial is
They married.
what she, I believe, goes by.
The roving
Right.
millennial.
The roaming millennial. She's
yes.
in that sort of
Same diff.
She just got let go from the
Ecosystem.
Blaze.
yeah, as a Blaze person.
And they said, well, if we're going to go after commentator 2, Tim Pool, it would take $100,000 per weekly episode to make it worth his while, which then they agreed to. And by they, I mean this mysterious financier named Edward Gregorian, who does not exist.
Very normal name. Very normal name that you might hear.
Where to even
Start?
dig in here? There are red flags all over this thing. So even though they are, as Tim Pool says in a tweet, victims of this,
I'm so tired of this victimhood complex of like.
if we were offered $100,000 to do one show per week that we were kind of already doing, and the person funding it is as someone who we can't meet or Google because there's no online trail of this person's existence, and we are sent a one sheet that looks like a stock photo of a guy on a private jet with a blurred out face, I think
that's
we'd
the best
have
part.
some significant conversations
Yeah.
about whether or not to accept that money.
Well, but Jonathan, we're not the most credulous people on the internet. We're not the. God, sorry. Go ahead.
I just think this whole story is delicious. Yummy. So good. Yeah. How does this even happen? You either are incredibly naive or stupid, or you're lying, and they're like, well, I'm just going to look the other direction. But let me just do a little peek behind the curtain. If you look at the views on these videos, they're too low. They're too low to warrant anything near that amount of money. In fact, I don't think you get an ad deal with that. Not that maybe the live stream is different. And I know that Tim Pool obviously has a big audience. So like in general, but this is just wild. So you're not asking yourself, who could this mystery person possibly be? But just blindly accepting $400,000 a month. And then very clearly parroting Russian talking points. I mean, we should play the clip, that clip of him.
The one where he says that Ukraine's the enemy, and he's really mad.
He's really mad about it.
He's such a funny performer.
He's like keyed up.
We kind of
pounding his fist.
It's so funny. We kind of hit on this in the recent Tim Pool episode, but like his performance is like what delights me the most because he's so bad at it and so obviously like I'm so mad. We're not gonna take it anymore. It's like that, but like the worst like least charismatic person you could think of.
And there is documentation to say that they were curious, like who this person is.
That's good.
They just didn't get information, and then we're like, okay, well, I guess we'll do it anyway because of the money. I mean,
there's so many things. Like you laid it out, Jonathan. Every step of the way, we're like, what? Why? What? No, that's weird. And it speaks so much to. Again, like the perfect collection of people. Like the fact that it's both Tim Pool and Dave Rubin. Obviously, Benny Johnson is a little cherry on top because he's just he's out there doing his thing. His failed like Tucker Carlson impression for a while, but like these guys are very. Aside from being like a little malicious and like liars, obviously like there's so many instances that you can find of Tim Pool just like straight up lying. Not in like maybe he's like no, he's lying to his audience. But they also are like stupid people with very limited critical thinking skills, and the idea that they got duped is plausible, but the idea that they were like, sure, I'll say whatever, is also plausible.
That clip, my favorite part of it is that you can see him looking down and reading the exact words that he's like prepared to say. It's great. He's like, where are my talking points? All right, there we go.
It's so obvious.
Let's see it.
Yeah.
But I don't know that it matters anymore. This is psychotic. Ukraine is the enemy of this country. Ukraine is our enemy, being funded by the Democrats. I will stress this again. One of the greatest enemies of our nation right now is Ukraine. They are expanding this war. Now, don't get me wrong. I know you've got criminal elements of the U.S. government pushing them and guiding them and telling them what to do. Ukraine is now accused, a German warrant issued for blowing up the Nord Stream pipeline, triggering this conflict.
Ukraine
is the greatest threat to this nation and to the world.
Tim,
we should rescind all funding and financing, pull out all military support, and we should apologize to Russia.
Tim.
Oh,
I forgot the answer like
let's
that.
send them a gift basket. Like, oops, our bad. Sorry.
So many things
Ukraine
about
is the enemy of America.
Before we move on and because I want to discuss this clip, I want to read from Tim Pool's tweet on this.
Yes.
Never at any point did anyone other than I have full editorial control of the show, and the contents of the show are often apolitical. Examples include discussing spirituality, dating, and games. So
Videos, games.
So he, is out there saying this
Bro,
content is all mine.
You have Twitter Blue to edit your tweet. Sorry. Go
Putin
ahead.
is a scumbag. Russia sucks donkey balls. This is an official Tim Pool missive. And to the journalists who want to jump the gun, create their own narrative, or lie about what is currently going on, you can eat my Irish ass.
No thanks.
I'm not sure
Oh.
why.
Tim O'Pool.
Anyway.
I mean, we've already alluded to this, but the beginning of that statement. Should these allegations prove true, I, as well as the other personalities and commentators, were deceived and are victims. $400,000 victims. Okay.
I would love to be a $400,000 a month victim.
I really, really, really would. But you have a job, and if you cared, this guy, like, if you cared about being legit or factually accurate in any capacity, you would care to know where this money is coming from. You were willfully deceived.
Yeah.
You allowed yourself to be deceived.
Again, we don't need to get into all the examples. He's kind of a stupid guy. And so even when he's lying, he's doing it poorly. He's not gonna, it's why he gets sued so much. And they're just he's not able, yes, he's dishonest, obviously, and oh no, I was duped into making so much money for so little work. In the the covering up of the lie, or the presenting of the lie, he does a bad job at that too. Even we saw in the video, he said the Nord Stream pipeline triggered the war. What are you talking about? It was 8 months later, Tim. What are you talking about?
That is wild.
I do doubt his claim that he has they're all his own talking points and he has editorial control. I would also say that maybe it's accurate in that he is given these talking points that he needs to hit, and he says, okay. And he has editorial control. He just said okay every single time, which still counts. He could have said no. He didn't, but he could have. So he retained editorial control and just happened to say that we owe Russia an apology. You can't say we owe Russia an apology and then also have a tweet that's they can eat my ass. Get out of here, Russia. That's not what you said.
You don't know which of his tweets are true and which aren't.
Exactly.
I do love that they put together this. They're okay, we need to have 6 voices, and then they put together this little weird GOP pro-Russia Avengers group.
Yeah, exactly.
But they're all Hawkeye.
It is wild. I mean, I guess it's not that wild. We've been seeing this happen for a while, but just our, supposedly our patriots out there, these guys that are Americans and want the American values, blah, 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 are you need to apologize to Russia.
It's so funny.
Paul Manafort's in the post-credits sequence. He's I'm putting together a team.
I'm putting together a team. It sucks.
This team sucks.
But the whole thing is even funnier if he did have full editorial control and these were just his talking points.
Oh, yeah.
That it's just he was sought out because his actual views line up so perfectly with Russia's views that they're like, yeah, this is the guy we want.
Well, exactly. That's the thing. Like, it's either, oh, he's already saying the stuff we want him to say.
Yeah.
In which case, your Russia sucks, Putin sucks, eat my ass doesn't work. Because you're already doing it, so they're just going to pay you to do it, continue to do it, or you're easily malleable.
Yeah. Well, in the
Or both.
in the indictment, there were the documents that showed like what Russia was asking them to do, and they kept repeating. They're like, there are no overtly pro-Russia politicians in the U.S. Like, be aware of this. You know, like, I like how they were trying to like frame it. They were just like, don't be too overt with it.
Oh,
but then they would be like, hey, you know that video of Tucker Carlson in a Russian supermarket?
Yeah, you should post that. And they're
post
like,
that.
Really? Post this? This seems a bit
you mean
much.
this propaganda? Yeah, post the propaganda. Okay.
It makes me think that the Russian disinformation system is a lot less sophisticated than I had thought, because they're just like, hey, the beanie guy wants to know who is the source of the money, and they're like, can we put together a flyer really quick? And then they're emailing like Edward Gregorian's assistant spelled his name wrong a bunch of times. And they're like, oh, he was born in Brussels and he went to this school and he was a master's of accounting and then he started a hedge fund. And it's like, okay, if he had done any of that, billionaire financiers are Googleable. So at the very, very least, you're like, okay, this is a stand-in for Charles Koch or whatever. But like, come on, is what I'm saying.
They're very sophisticated because they chose really effective targets.
It does seem as if Lauren Chen and her hubby, Liam Donovan, did seem to know that this was Russia.
Yes, they...
It's not confirmed, but there are private chats.
Well, right. They haven't, as of when we're recording, they have not been charged with anything, but those people are going to jail, right? Like they
I would assume.
They, in private conversations, they referred to the Russians, and then when they sent a message and didn't hear back from them right away, they Googled time in Moscow. So...
Saw that.
You know, that would
Also,
seem
I
to
love
suggest...
This story, we should share this story. What about the France meetup in Paris?
Oh, this
How
bit from
like
the...
commentator one, which was did you Dave Rubin?
Yeah, just based on the number of YouTube subscribers, some people
Yeah,
think it's Benny
that's
Johnson.
the guess.
It could be, but I think it's Dave Rubin. But yeah, not positive.
It's like on or about June 2nd, 2023, Edward Gregorian circulated an email to Founder One and to Commentator One's assistant, scheduling a Zoom meeting for 5 p.m. Paris that day. At approximately 8:58 a.m. Central Time that day, Edward Gregorian replied to his earlier email, "I am there, guys." The time, in fact, was 3:58 p.m. in Paris, but it was 4:58 p.m. in Moscow. So, not that should have connected the dots for anybody out of the gate. Like, I don't know if I would have thought, like,
Zoom
what time is
meeting
it in
schedule,
Moscow?
Yeah.
But then he's like, oh, sorry, wrong hour. Didn't sync the calendar. What is that? That's
And
not,
he Googled time in
didn't
Paris.
see?
That's so
Oh,
funny.
yeah. And he Googled time in Paris. So that's a pretty big clue. It's funny. Like I said, it's delicious. It's as delicious as those delicious cookies I baked last night.
Yeah. It's just very funny.
It's
there's also,
satisfying.
well, because also, like, these are guys who have for years also just sort of like prided themselves and like banged the desk about like independent media and how independent they are, and they've got no fingers in the pie with them. And like, you can't trust the mainstream media. You can trust us. We're independent. We are from the ground up. And it's like, well, no, you're not. You take money from whoever gives you money, and clearly you read it, like you just read it on camera, and we can see you lying on camera. And it's just very satisfying. I hope even more information comes out about it, because it speaks so clearly to the problem with so much of like the right-wing media sphere, and like popular ones too. Like Tim Pool is popular, I don't know if Dave Rubin's popular anymore, but like there's this like ecosystem that feeds into itself that has always been sort of marked by like dishonesty and intense credulity and just like being like dumb liars. And this is a really great concrete example of them doing that and being that for money. And I hope that people realize that and maybe consider like what that means. Like, oh, I've been eating up all these talking points from them, and like I believed them, and that maybe influenced my opinions about other stuff, and led me to this other creator who I like look down the line and see where you are with these people. Where did these people bring you? And look at what
that's
brought
asking
them
a
there.
lot.
It's asking a lot, but I hope that happens for a few people. I also like how Tim said that the allegations leaked.
He deleted it and reposted
Okay.
it. Yeah, he reposted it without the
Well,
word
he
leak.
is a smart man then, isn't he?
Benny Johnson still says leaked, though.
Yeah, he does.
Oh, yeah?
Yeah.
Just
Well, he
gonna-
plagiarized it from Tim and then didn't update it. Before we move on, I just wanted to sort of button up the tenet of it all. And I'm my biggest concern, I think, is just like what's going to happen to Timcast, the band.
Tim. Yeah.
Like,
God.
my favorite band named after a political podcast, Timcast. Is it going to cause tension? Are they going to like, maybe it'll actually be really good for them. Maybe it'll inspire him to write a lot of songs about this, about being a victim. You know, he's such a $400,000 a month victim that maybe that's where like art comes from, you know, from
Hopefully there's some financial retribution that he can receive for being such a victim. But yeah, maybe this will be a good period of creativity for him.
I hope it's good for the band Timcast and not
walk
bad
through
for the
that
band
fire.
Timcast,
Into the Timcast. Okay, well, I did think you had a serious point,
Well.
but that was a fun point. We are going to move on because we've got Parker on the show, so this feels like a really good opportunity to talk about the media in general and the way that it fails us. I think it goes hand in hand with the story we just discussed. Jonathan, do you want to set this up for us? I know the answer is yes.
Yes, that you guessed accurately. No,
I just didn't want to be rude, like Jonathan.
Yeah,
Set it up.
I'll be rude. Do you want me to be rude for you?
Yeah.
Jonathan, get it together. We're moving on to the next part, and it's time for you
I
to...
didn't believe this.
Okay.
Okay?
So we got
Speak up.
sorry. Yeah.
Oh, that
so,
was rude. That was rude. That was really rude.
It seems like there's a double standard out there when it comes to coverage of Kamala Harris, or really any Democrat, or any for most
anything.
politicians, and how Donald John Trump is covered. You wrote
That was
about this.
Jason.
You thought it was
Donald Jason.
Really?
No, I don't know.
Yeah.
Donald Jamiroquai Trump.
Yeah, wasn't it Jamiroquai?
I believe his full name is Donald John President.
The way this happens is that Trump will just, you know how he talks, the guy. He'll
Beautifully.
He'll talk for about 2, 3, 4 minutes and weave in and out brilliantly as he assesses, and then, you know, CNN will do a headline that says, former President Donald Trump reached an agreement for the September 10th debate, and quotes maybe the most hinged part of his like 300
He does
word
like to toss in
truth.
a few hinged moments.
And they don't mention, you wrote about this week, Parker, they don't mention that in his like Truth Social truth about agreeing to the debate, that he had referred to Kamala Harris as Comrade Kamala, that he referred to crooked Joe Biden, ABC fake news, NBC fake news, and then brought up this grievance with Donna Brazile from 8 years ago that I had to like look up and remind myself what he was talking about, and I won't go into details here because who gives a shit? But it's frustrating, isn't it?
Yeah, so this was something that I first wrote about back in 2020, when right when COVID kind of started, and Trump would go to the CDC, and I would watch, you know, like everyone was watching what was happening because it seemed like it was starting to get bad. And Trump would go to the CDC and then give a little speech where he would talk about Fox News ratings, and then pick a fight with Jay Inslee, and
Yeah.
just a few things that had nothing. Talk about how he tried to extort Ukraine into digging up dirt on Biden, like that sort of stuff. And then the New York Times would run a headline that would say, Trump tells Americans to stay calm in the face of COVID. It's like what the hell? But there was a perfect example of this right before we started recording. Trump was giving a speech at the Economic Club of New York, and he was asked a really simple question. He was asked, if you win in November, can you commit to prioritizing legislation to make childcare affordable? And if so, what specific piece of legislation will you advance? And he spoke for 2 minutes, where he went on a rant where he talked about Marco Rubio, Ivanka, they're very important on this issue. And then about something about how he's going to tax other countries, and he's looking
For our
forward to
childcare?
Yeah. Well, and he sort of he says this is about America first. It's about making America great again. So we have to do it. He doesn't say what it is, but so he does that. He rambles for 2 minutes, and the New York Times wrote it up as so. After his speech, Donald Trump was asked how he might address rising childcare costs. In a jumbled answer, he said he would prioritize legislation on the issue, but offered no specifics and insisted that his other economic policies, including tariffs, would take care of childcare. As much as childcare is talked about as being expensive, it's, relatively speaking, not very expensive compared to the kind of numbers we'll be taking in. And that last part was a quote from Trump, but it was the most coherent part of a 2-minute answer that went absolutely nowhere.
It's also barely coherent.
It was worse than J.D. Vance's answer on childcare, which was also terrible.
At least they said jumbled. But so that's something. But even that doesn't encapsulate this man's energy when he's up there. It isn't in jumble. It's word salad. It's chaos coming out of his mouth, and he doesn't answer questions. But bringing it back to the media reporting, I obviously talk a lot about having moved to the mountains and the different conversations, and sometimes they're good, sometimes they're frustrating. I get very frustrated when it's like, people say like, no, Donald Trump has specific policy plans. I'm like, what? Like, what is his policy? I just get so... I still have it. It still befuddles me. I know that there's answers and we're going to talk about it, or like reasons, and there's this and there's that. But at the end of the day, it still boggles my mind how we interpret what comes out of this person's mouth so differently. And a lot of it is the reporting or the whitewashing of stuff in these articles where it's like, yeah, it was a bit jumbled, but here's our best guess of what he said. And it's like, what is that? That's not even a policy. And we've seen this man in action for long enough to know that he just says whatever the I have to try to stop swearing so much. He just says whatever the heck he wants.
In 2016, we talked a lot about, the media's normalizing Trump. So this has been a problem for a while. And I think a lot of people who don't watch all of these clips and don't listen to Trump as much as we do, they don't understand how bad it's gotten, because it is worse than it was 4 years ago. It is worse than it was 8 years ago. I had this clip up and I'm like, I'm not going to suggest the Trump talking about childcare. I was like, I'm not going to suggest that we play this clip on the show because it's too long. You would get the point, and it is 2 minutes, and it is tough to listen to. And it's clear the same thing happened to him that happened to J.D. Vance. They were like, I don't have a plan for childcare. What the Republican Party? Excuse me. But then J.D. Vance at least said, maybe the grandparents can take care of him.
That's the thing.
Go ahead.
Trump's answer, even the clips that we're alluding to, they are very rambly and there's nothing there. But also, I feel like they're also he's rambling more, but he's also more tired. He's bored with his rambling. And so you have to sort of parse this, it's just not, there's nothing keeping people watching him. So the media has to be his translator, and they're just so willing to give him the benefit of the doubt still. It's very bizarre. But I did want to sort of contrast this element of Trump with J.D. Vance real quick, because I think that it's very interesting and funny. They're two sides of this bizarre coin that has nothing to say, but wants you to think that like we love the working class and we love parents and all, like we're the party of families. But when you actually ask them about that, they can't do anything. JD Vance can go in front of a bunch of firefighters and be like, we're the GOP of the working class, and then he gets booed because no, you're not, and everybody knows it. And so there's this tension of what they want the party to be perceived as and what the party actually is and will allow. And that tension is in constant conflict now, especially with JD involved and Trump in his current state. You have this weird rambling answer from Donald Trump about childcare, and it goes off on all these tangents about Donna Brazil, like all whatever he talks about. And mentioning people don't eat bacon anymore and it's the wind's fault, whatever it is. And then finally you're like, oh, his answer is tariffs, I guess, or something like that. Bad answer. And then you have JD Vance, who is asked the same question by Charlie Kirk, I believe.
I don't know why Charlie Kirk thought he would.
I don't know why
I know.
he thought he would have a good answer. Charlie Kirk again wants the Republicans, he's paid to like be there, but he wants them to be able to present themselves as we care about working class families, and that's where they want the party to be, and it's never going to happen. Sorry, folks. But Charlie Kirk asks him that, and also I was surprised Charlie Kirk was not involved in the Tenet situation. Good for him. Good for him. JD Vance's answer to this question about childcare was twofold. And that's the difference between Donald Trump and him. He is very boring and doesn't ramble in the same way. He presents himself as somebody who's thought about this for a while, whether it be on 4chan or whatever newsletter he's getting, whatever Substack he subscribes to. And his answer was, well, I think one solution is, maybe ask their grandma to help out. Like literally that's half of his answer is just like, ask your family to help out with childcare. That's a solution. That's something everybody does already. If they have a good relationship with their family. Shut up, JD. Why did you even say anything? So that's part one.
Yeah.
And part two is that he thinks that there should be less restrictions and regulations on people who want to get into that realm. And maybe that's true to some extent in some variety, but he's basically saying that like we shouldn't be like vetting these people as much and having all these like big expensive like degrees and requirements for people to take care of kids. Do you care about taking care of kids? Because you should have like regulations to make sure that they like people who are charged with taking care of these kids know what they're doing and are doing it well, and no CPR things like that, where like, and so his answer is ask your grandma for help, or we should let more people just do it.
Although we are drifting away from
I had to.
The thrust of what this section is supposed to be, which is the bias in the media reporting of our candidates. And we've talked a lot about Trump and JD, and then you contrast it with how we're talking about Kamala. And there are valid criticisms, but it's wild to see them talked about like this. Jonathan, set us up with some of the stuff that you've prepared for.
Well, it's just that there is an expectation, and I think it's completely fair to ask Kamala Harris about flip-flopping on issues from 2019 to now, right?
Wasn't that long ago?
I know why she did it, and Dana Bash knows why. And we all know why, right. But like, what are you going to say? That's totally valid. And then, hey, what are your policy proposals? You don't have a policy thing on your website yet.
Yes.
Totally valid. There is an expectation for her to, like, Elizabeth Warren, I've got a plan for that, buttoned up with a CBO score for everything.
Elizabeth Warren would have hit the ground running with a bunch of plans.
And I think like a lot of times this is maybe a bit of a separate issue, but I do think the reporting is bad by omission because Parky, you wrote about this as well. I didn't even know at that Moms of Liberty event that Trump went to that he had said, your kid goes to school and comes home a few days later with an operation. That was simply left out of the coverage of this event. And that is a wild thing to say and not even be part of the report.
Yeah. It's one thing I think is really worth noting is that in 2020, Donald Trump did not have an issues page on his website either when he was running for a re-election, and no one cared.
No one
one
cared.
brought that up. And yeah, there's just such a double standard here where one side is expected to have super detailed policies with right down to how they're going to be paid for, and they're going to be scrutinized and they're going to be torn apart, in the press. And the other side, it's just like, well, Trump said in 2 weeks we'll have an answer on something. And then whenever he actually gets around to giving an answer, it'll be something like, well, healthcare, everyone's going to have good healthcare. And they'll be like, well, Trump promised everyone's going to have good healthcare. So there you go. There you have it.
That's fixed.
And it's mostly false if you say that he isn't doing that because he said he was going to.
He said,
which is like
going
what
to,
half of
so-
those
Well,
fact
I
checks
don't know.
are.
Yeah.
Oh, yeah. The fact checks.
It is the bar got lowered so much for one specific party, and in response to the bar being lowered, it was raised also, like
For the other.
like it's this weird, like it's a double imbalance that happened to like make up for it, where it's almost like, well, I guess that's a lost cause. Like we're not gonna. It's a different relationship now with this party. And so I guess we need to focus on this other party because they're the only other one we have.
I'm just going to say one last thing about the Trump rambling about childcare costs. Here's a perfect example. So Benji Sarlin, who is over at Semaphore, he's Washington bureau chief at Semaphore. He tweeted this. He tweeted, "I'm being told here that Trump is diminished because he did not give a focused answer on childcare access, a topic where he previously would have launched into a detailed discussion on balancing supply, demand, and budget concerns rather than word associate his way through it." And so basically, he's being sarcastic and saying like, "Well, this is just how Trump's always been, so that's how we cover him,"
Again, they're tired. It's like, do your job. It doesn't matter.
It's almost like, and this is just the battle since the beginning of time. By that, I mean since Donald Trump became a politician. I think that maybe there's an effort to not seem biased in some way because if you just print out his word salad or really highlight all of it, it's like, well, this is a hit piece. This is obviously biased and is coming for Donald Trump. But the truth is that they're going to think that anyway.
Yep.
People think that the media is rigged against Donald Trump. And that is the other thing that takes me back. I'm like, really? Because I see it being pretty friendly to the guy. I see the media, normalizing. He's normalized. I also think that him leaving Twitter helped us forget the extreme nature of his, outbursts and insults. And so it's like you get a little desensitized to it. But when the media isn't printing things the way that we were actually said, when they do their best to make him seem presentable or whatever, it is absolutely working to just whitewash him. And anyway, my point is it doesn't really matter. They're always going to say that the media is biased. You might as well just report the whole freaking thing.
It's like when the Republican Party and a lot of the media are going to call Democrats communists no matter what. They're like their socialist healthcare plan that's not like they're going to do that no matter what with anything that is proposed. So just do what you want to do. Do what you think we should do. They're going to say it no matter what.
Well, one thing that I think is positive coming out of this, that, if we're looking for some sort of silver lining,
always,
is that people seem to be noticing that the press does this more. And there's been a lot of kind of frustration and anger among people on the left towards the media. Mm-hmm. And I've seen a lot of journalists who are like, whoa, why is the left coming for us? And by left, it's just anyone to the left of Mitt Romney, basically.
Yeah.
I think that's a positive thing, where it's people speaking up and being like, hey, you're not doing a good job. You should do a better job.
I do too.
And for a long time, it's just been kind of treated like, well, criticizing the press is a right-wing thing to do and not something that liberals do. But it's like...
Yeah. But I think that we all should be aware of that the media is biased, or there's lots of ways that reporting is tricky. And it's not even about left or right. It's who's funding this, or what are the goals or objectives. It's that same thing that Chris Hayes once said when somebody was like, why don't you talk about climate change more often? And he's like, flat out, it doesn't do as well on the show, so they don't let me. I'm like, well, that's just business. It's upsetting.
Put it in there.
But that's, but like there are lots of reasons for us to not just knee-jerk trust the media. There are lots of reasons for us all to be aware of that, be aware of how we're being manipulated. We got to do our best with what we have.
But like, yeah, I feel like there's there's almost like a knee-jerk protection of the media in 20, because like it's like the left like criticizing the media isn't like a new phenomenon.
No.
The media is always going to be trying to manufacture consent for some such business. I think in 2016 there was this sort of instinctive like, we got to protect the media now. Donald Trump is out there and he's calling them the enemy of the people, and he's saying the fake news thing, and he's doing like the Lugenpress. He's doing all the Hitler stuff with the media. Understandably, we're like, whoa, hey, this is like a very important part of our democracy, and you can't be saying that stuff. And so there was a lot of almost like brushing aside of any missteps or anything that was dishonest, and not like lifted up like, look, they're so dishonest, but like, let's not look at that thing. We need to protect them. And then I think 4 years of Trump and seeing that sort of pattern and how like, well, they don't actually hate that he is there. The guy who owns Politico is like, yeah, we kind of really want Trump to be the president. And that's recent, obviously, but like, the 4 years of Trump and then seeing some of the coverage of Biden and whatnot, I think has allowed people to come back around and be like, no, actually, it's okay to criticize the media all the time, actually, in the same way that it's okay and recommended to like criticize politicians all the time, even if they're in your own party. But there was this sort of protectionism, I think, for both the Democratic Party and the media generally.
Totally.
Because of Trump existing and being so prominent,
and because it became, especially 2020 and all of those years, the Trump years, became like the media is the target. The media is unfair to Donald Trump, so the media is getting piled up on, and so we felt the need to be defensive of it.
As we see like with the Tenet situation, there's a lot of misinformation out there, a lot of propaganda from a lot of people, and it's easy to sort of I don't know, for just sort of be extra defensive about something that is good but should be criticized when it's being attacked by people who suck. And I think it's good. It is good, like Parker, you're saying, we've come back around to like, just don't say that they're the enemy of the people and should all die. Like that's what was going on for so long. It's like we gotta murder the media. And now we can comfortably say like, well, no, but do your job better. This sucks. Yeah. Get rid of the Pinocchio system or whatever.
Yeah. Well, with that, I think like we can all agree that like people on the right are never going to be like, you know what, actually CNN, you're doing a great job. Like that's just not going to happen. I mean, after the 2020 election, when Fox News was like, Biden won the election, or like would post things on Twitter just being like, this state just got called for Biden. The responses would be like, you've sold out to the fake news. I'm going to Newsmax. I'm going to OAN. It's like people on the right just want to hear,
they just want their fairy tales.
Yeah. While people, I think on the left or liberals just generally, will give the press credit when credit's due. But I think now it's just so weird and unbalanced that you have people on the left correctly criticizing the media and people on the right doing what they always do. And that just sends this message to journalists that, well, if I'm making both sides mad, I must be doing something right.
Yeah,
right.
God.
Yeah. Isn't that what Dana Bash said after criticism of her interview?
Yeah.
Is it actually
That's
what she said?
Yeah, that's
Her
I know that's
sign.
like the go-to line, but like,
that was
Tana. That is pathetic.
She said that in an interview with the Daily Beast. She said her exact line was, "The fact that nobody in their entrenched camps was happy makes me think that I probably was in just about the right place."
Great job, Tana. Great job.
I think you need to rethink that. All right, guys. Well, we did it. We talked about the media. We had Parker here. We talked about Tim.
We did a reverse pincer movement on Tenet Media.
And Jonathan was also here. I feel like this show has it all. Party in the USA.
It's a real party in the USA.
Party in the USA. I'm not a singer.
Sure you are.
Guys,
Everyone's a singer.
like and subscribe.
Everyone's a singer. Music's in all of our hearts.
Everyone is a singer. It's definitely in my heart.
I know.
It just doesn't come out of my mouth the way it sounds
Sure
in
it
my
does.
heart.
Everyone's a singer.
Like and subscribe, comments, help us. If you're watching this video, thanks. That's cool. If you're listening to it, also cool. Thank you. Thank you, Parker, for joining us. Can you tell our audience where to find you?
Yes.
The
you can
things.
subscribe to my newsletter at readtpa.com. That's the present age. So readtpa.com, or follow me on social media, various places, all under my name. So just search Parker Molloy. You'll find me, probably.
If anyone's willing to pay $100,000 a week for a media newsletter,
I would love to put out like 4 newsletters a week and make $400,000 a month. I gotta say that my newsletter is not quite to that point yet.
Just leaning into I mean, Ukraine is the enemy of the USA.
Actually,
Damn it.
I'm so mad. I'm mad all the time. Here's what you're gonna do.
Down. I don't know. I don't have more. Cody, you'd be better. Rewriting it for Tim Pool.
Oh.
My hands down, throw them up. Ukraine's the enemy of the USA.
There we go.
Whatever.
Yeah, go.
Fine. We got there. Thanks, guys.
Thanks.
The show's over.
It's over now.
But not quite, because I haven't told you something very important.
Wait.
We love you very much.